Hey everybody, and welcome to my micro lecture for Chapter 12, which is specifically about developing and pricing products. Again, this is a kind of the next step chapter from Chapter 11, where we did kind of the overview of the marketing process. And so some of the things that you read here are going to be just basically layering on top of what you had read in Chapter 11. And again, micro lectures are my opportunity to talk about things that I think are important and that don't get enough maybe attention in the text. So that's really the purpose of these things. You are still obviously responsible for reading the entire chapter and understanding all the concepts that are put forward in the text. Okay, so the learning objectives for this chapter are explain the definition of a product as a value package and how to classify goods and services. Describe the new product development process as something that's undergone a whole lot of change. Describe the changes of the product, the stages of the product life cycle and methods for extending a product's life. You want to identify the various pricing objectives. When we talk about pricing, govern pricing decisions. Pricing is a balancing act. You have multiple objectives that are sometimes in direct opposition of each other, and you have to find where's the right balance, okay? And you want to be able to discuss pricing strategies that can be used for different competitive situations, and identify pricing tactics that can be used for setting prices. And it does a good job of covering the basics on there in the text, okay? So let's talk about the value package. This is just kind of part and parcel to the whole thing. We have to think about the product itself, the features that it has, and what are some of the tangible and intangible qualities that a company builds into its products. And then we talk about the value packages. The product is marketed as a bundle of value added attributes, including a reasonable cost. So let me use as an example hot dogs. Hot dogs are pretty simple sausage, and you might get a package of them and eat them at home. And so that's what that is. But go to a baseball game in the summer, sit out in the stands, and you smell the hot dogs being cooked out there. It is just not the same thing. As a menu choice, I rarely make it at home, but for some reason or other at a ballpark, I gotta have one. I don't know. It just goes with the whole experience. So that's part of what we would call the value package. Okay. All right. So this is an important distinction we need to make, which is between the product's features, which are tangible and intangible qualities that a company builds into its products. So it really defines the product, what it is. Benefits, however, are what the consumer values about the product or service. What do they propose that they get out of it? And again, both of these things come into play. Primarily benefits, because they ultimately determine what value the customer sees in it, and the higher the value the customer sees in your product, the higher the price you can charge for it. Sort of think of it that way, okay? So this one's a little out of place, but it really was talked about in the last chapter, but I want to talk about it here. So your product is a good or service that is marketed to fulfill the customer's needs and wants, but a really important thing here is product differentiation, and this is a really important part of the strategy. I don't know why I'm on hot dogs, so I'll talk about hot dogs. If we have decided to open up a restaurant in downtown, Des Plaines or Skokie, let's say, if we put a hot dog stand in, we have to do something to differentiate ourselves, don't we? Because it's just another hot dog stand, and in Chicago, especially, there's like one on every corner, right? I mean, they're all over the place, all right? So we have to think about what we're going to do to differentiate what we're offering compared to where you can get just about anywhere else. So I'm going to use as an example, we think about companies having a core competence or something that they do specifically very well that ends up in the features and ultimately the benefits of their product. So taking Honda as an example, and Honda does a lot of different things. We know them to make cars, but then we think about motorcycles and other things as well. But they do a lot of different things. But they will tell you that their core competence is designing and engineering and producing highly reliable, small, high-output engines. That's what they do. Now you say, it's like, really? But they do so much more than that. So, but that's core. That's core to their competence and what sets them apart. They go into motorcycles, cars, boats, jet aircraft. There's lots of different things you put on the engines. And so that's what they do. And so, you have to think very clearly about what your core competence is as you develop your products. And then you have to think about who you're marketing to. And I'm going to use this as an example. We all know what a Sharpie is. But you say to yourself, okay, well, let's talk about this product. The pen that's in that package on the left is the same as the pen that's in that box on the right. But they were developed for two different markets. The one on the left was developed for the retail market, or what you and I might buy if we needed a Sharpie at home. And the one on the right is meant to be sold as an office product to offices where they might go through lots of Sharpies in whatever it is that they do in their office. So the packaging is completely different, although the product itself is basically the same. So it really depends on who you're marketing to. And that's one product line being developed to both. So when we develop new products, it goes through the product development process. And the key thing I want you to take away from that is the speed to market. This is just astounding how much this has come down. When I first got into business, and on the marketing side and on the product development side of things, it was a slow process. It could take a long time to develop a product. Even simple products, it could take a long time to get them developed. And now that product development process happens at the speed of light. It's amazing how fast it goes. And there's lots of reasons why that's happening. One is, product developers are using lots of different types of information to help them design products. So, and they've got a lot of data available to them to do that. And all those things really speed up the process. So, you can see a lot of analytics. Machine learning is AI, basically, another word for it. 3D design tools, visualization tools. All those things are really important, and all of those help the product development process go better and more quickly than they did in the past. And there's another thing that shows all the different things that people might do to help them develop new products. And you can go online and actually generate a lot of information that way. Products go through what we would call the product life cycle. And we can think about the products being at any one point in time over it. The way that works is we look at the phase of the cycle that the product's in. There's an introductory phase, a growth phase, a maturity phase, and a decline phase, often stated in terms of time, but more importantly, characteristics of what's happening with the product in the marketplace. So as it gives examples, SpaceX or whatever, commercial space flights, that's kind of in the introductory phase. I know you can buy a ticket, I think. I'm pretty sure you can. But I don't know when you're going to go. And then we go into the growth phase, and we can think about like smartphones being in there, that kind of thing. And then we think about landline phones being at the decline stage, and we think about brick and mortar retail store, DVD rental stores. I think there's still some around, but I haven't. They were once all over the place. Okay. And this was all defined. This was basically developed by the Boston Consulting Group, but these were all defined by some of these characteristics. So in the introductory phase, we anticipated that we might be losing money, they would be unprofitable, and even through part of the growth phase. But then if everything works, because obviously a product can fail anywhere along this entire life cycle, we get into the growth phase where we'd hopefully see a turn to profitability, and then the maturity phase is where we are. Let's just say we're trying to get as much out of it as we possibly can for as long as we can. We want the maturity phase to last a long time. Obviously, that's where our profits are highest. But inevitably, that'll be in a decline stage. And obviously, this depends a lot on the products themselves. Technology products can turn over very, very, very fast. It's amazing how fast they can turn over. So this whole curve might happen in the course of less than a year. And for other products, it might take a really long time. Okay, so it might take decades and decades for products to go through this cycle. So it really depends on the product itself. So Boston Consulting Group again said that they looked at as they took where products were in the whole process, and it kind of said, here's how you're going to decide what to do with your product line depending on where it is on the process. So the cash cows were in the maturity phase, and that's where our growth might not be so high, but we're still making lots and lots of money by it. If our growth slows down and our relative market share starts to diminish just because something better came along, that's when you try to get out of it. So there's a lot of different ways to look at this, but those are different ways to do it. Now, this is kind of a combination of brand and product development, but this is one of the classic, I'm so glad I have nothing to do with this in my professional career, but because it's always used as an example of a failure, and it was called the new Coke. So Coke, realizing that they were in the maturity phase and were starting to see a slight decline in market share, which they don't stand for very well at Coke, I can guarantee you that, they decided to come up with a new formulation for Coke. And it was called New Coke, and as you can see, it doesn't look that new. Certainly from a packaging standpoint, they did not want to lose the power of their brand in this process, but by the same token, the consumers just summarily rejected it. They spent $4 million in product development costs, probably more than that, would be my guess. And it was on the market for exactly 74 days before it was pulled and never seen again. So that's you want to be able to extend your product's life, but you have to be careful how you do it. You can't hurt your brand. And speaking of brands, which is the overarching value of the company manufacturing it, there's lots of products you buy every day that you don't know what the brand is. Really, you don't remember what it is, but there's some that you're like, oh yeah, and these brands mean something to you. And in valuation, these are the top brands, and I guess most people wouldn't be surprised. They are also some of the largest companies that are out there as well. So that gives you a rough idea of the value of the brand, and it's a very important thing to develop. Okay, so let's talk about pricing real quick. As I mentioned, pricing is a balancing act. You have to get a combination of trying to make money on the sale of your products, and you have to offset that by making sure that the customers are willing to pay the price that you are charging for your product. So you have these almost in opposition types of objectives that you have to balance, and it's not easy. And there's no simple and easy solution to it. I'm going to tell you that. So it does take a lot of work and a lot of analysis to really understand exactly where you should be from a pricing position on your products. So anyway, you'll read more about it in the chapter. If you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to ask, and good luck.